All right, board. So next thing on our agenda is to discuss the complaints that we're receiving for people not wearing masks in the common area.
Can you hear me?
Hey, did you take the dog out yet?
Hear me?
Oh yeah, can you do that, please? It's gonna pee all over the carpet, and I can't clean that again.
Hello?
There's a
Can you
mute
hear
button, Matt.
What?
Where?
There is.
Can you
Where?
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ruby.
Apparently they can
Like,
hear what
you
I'm
gotta
saying.
push the button, Matt. There's a mute button.
Yeah, I muted myself, so it's fine.
Okay, Zoom 101. Okay,
Yeah.
so just don't push your mute buttons right now.
No earworm medication tonight.
Hello?
Matt, we can hear you.
Hello?
Jessica, are those your cats? They're so cute. I'm gonna adopt them.
Okay.
They are. They're
back to
adorable.
the subject, guys. Can you all
Oh my
hear
God,
me?
I'm gonna do it.
Back to the
Yes,
subject.
they're
Jessica,
adorable.
what do you think about this mask situation? What should
Helen,
we do?
why do you always call on her? Is it because she's blonde?
Oh.
No,
Mhm.
Marcia, she gives us great answers. But I can ask you, Marcia, what do you think?
Nothing. I just didn't want you to call on her. That's all.
Okay.
Oh God.
All right, great.
Yeah, Marcia and Jessica are at it again. Can you believe
Okay,
it?
what? Yeah. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll come back.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Oh, thank God we're taking a break.
Welcome to Breakout Group number 2. We have a lot of wonderful information and fantastic speakers in store for you. Our first speaker today is Dr. Lori Baker-Schena. I am so honored to welcome her today. She is not only a mentor of mine, she's a great friend of mine, and she is certainly an authority. Dr. Lori Baker-Schena is a leadership consultant and professional speaker who works with individuals and businesses, including community association management companies, to achieve high levels of excellence, productivity, and profitability. Dr. Baker-Schena brings to her clients 35 years as a healthcare public relations and marketing consultant and 25 years as a tenured university professor teaching public relations and journalism. It's my great honor to introduce Dr. Lori Baker-Schena to you today.
Hi, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm Dr. Lori Baker-Schena, and I'm here today to speak about the role of leadership with our board members. You know, a lot of you, I remember, in fact, a year ago, here we were in a beautiful, beautiful room joining together to talk about the ABCs of HOAs. And yet today, here you are in front of your computer watching me. So the question becomes, how did we get here? Well, 2020 has been quite the year. And I love this photo because it represents everything that 2020 was to me. Here we are, excited about the new year. And then, in fact, I remember speaking to you last year about the possibilities of 2020. And then the disco ball dropped and things kind of blew up. And so we're sitting here today in December, and we've got to think to ourselves, how did we get here? What's going on? Well, obviously, the biggest culprit is COVID-19. And I want to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and how it impacted the way we feel, because it's important to figure out where we are so that we can become more positive as leaders. So the first thing about COVID-19 is that it brought economic uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen in the economy, and we've seen this past year truly ups and downs. We're definitely in the middle of a recession. The unemployment figures go up and down. So it's been very tough to really feel economically stable. The second thing that's really impacting us is the health uncertainty. I've been around a long time, and I cannot remember a time when we even the thought of going outside could possibly hold a health threat. So that's very disturbing, and it leads to a lot of uncertainty. And finally, we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know if it's going to last another 6 months, 8 months, a year. There's so much uncertainty, and that uncertainty leads to anxiety. So where we stand in December. So here we are, it's December 2020, and it seems that everyone is anxious. And I think that's because of the COVID-19 uncertainty factors. Winter is almost here, and that means perhaps even an increase in the COVID cases. And a lot of us are finding ourselves still juggling work and a home life and board member responsibility. So there's a lot of juggling, and that's stressful. Plus, holidays, come on, are always stressful, no matter how much fun they are. And you add a layer of pandemic to that, and the holidays become even more stressful. And what you see are a lot of homeowners on edge. And those homeowners on edge really make everyone feel a little bit anxious. So what do you do as a leader to rise above this? And that is what I want to really speak to you today about. And how we rise above this is to pivot to the positive. It is crucial that we stay positive during this time. Instead of that idea of we can't do this or we can't do that because we're in a pandemic and things are bad, we have to flip the switch here and say we can do that. And when we pivot to the positive, all of a sudden things start opening up, and you'll see a real lift in your life and in your leadership as a board member. So I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about your role as a board member, because your role as a board member is a board leader. So why did you decide to become a board member? Well, a lot of you decided to do that because you wanted to protect your property values and the quality of life that you expect in your community. Some of you specifically joined the board because there was a particular problem that you wanted to correct in your community. Many of you wanted to join the boards because you wanted to give back to your community and your neighbors. Some of you wanted to just be sociable and meet your neighbors and make friends, which is always wonderful with the board. And finally, many of you wanted to express yourself and become real problem solvers and real creative so that you could figure out ways to elevate your community. But one of the most striking reasons why people become board members is the opportunity to hone your leadership skills. Because at the end of the day, you are leaders. Everyone watching me today is a leader. And with that leadership comes responsibility. So what are the characteristics of a successful board leader? First of all, a successful board leader has a willingness to serve the community with a capital S, serve the community. They possess excellent people skills. They know when to ask for help and when to delegate. They embrace change. And for the purposes of this discussion, they are positive and optimistic. That is the sign of a really successful leader. So how do you get this positivity? How do you become a positive leader? One of my favorite books is called The Leadership Challenge. And I urge you to get a copy. There's a lot of used copies out there because it really talks about the 5 practices that you can do to really become a great leader. And I want to quickly go through those. The first practice is modeling the way. Great leaders create standards of excellence and set an example for others to follow. They model what they want to see. The second practice is they inspire a shared vision. Board leaders create an ideal and unique image of what the association can become, and then inspire other board members to see exciting possibilities for the future. That's inspiring a shared vision. The third thing is challenging the process. Forget the excuses. Let's look at the results. Board leaders that are successful search for innovative ways to improve the community, especially in light of CC&R restraints, budget constraints, yet they're still innovative in how they can elevate the community. The fourth thing, which I love, is enable others to act. Enable others around you, your board members, your homeowners. They foster collaboration. They build an enthusiastic team and actively involve others, understanding that mutual respect sustains extraordinary efforts. And finally, successful leaders encourage the heart. And this is probably the most important thing these days. To keep hope and determination alive, board leaders recognize the contributions that other people make and celebrate accomplishments and make people feel like heroes. They celebrate everyone on the board, their homeowners, the people who really make a difference. So it's great to be a great leader, of course, but how do you do that? Where does it come from? Well, it comes from lifting your own morale and your spirits. To be a great leader, you need to be confident, and you need that confidence to shine through. So what does that look like? Well, I have some ideas. This is my motivational speaker side, because first of all, we wake up every day where we can make a choice. We make a choice either to wake up happy or wake up miserable. You can, no matter what is thrown at you, you can either choose to have a miserable day or choose to be a happy day. I choose happiness every single day because I know that's the only thing that moves you ahead. Number two, if you really want to improve your morale, make someone else happy. Do something for yourself, for a friend, for a homeowner, for the community. That really helps by making someone else's day, that lifts your morale. Live in gratitude. It's easy to get discouraged, but if you live in gratitude and be grateful for what you have, as opposed to being upset by what you don't have, your spirits will lift. I suggest you keep a gratitude journal where every night you list 5 things that you're grateful for. Even in the darkest days, I'm always grateful for flush toilets and pizza and microwave ovens. You can't beat that. Plus the fact that I can speak to you today and there's technology, even though I can't be with you in person, I'm grateful that we can connect. So those things are how you maintain gratitude. Be mindful of the fact that we are living this life right now, and everything you do impacts others. So when you speak, be mindful of the importance of being kind. When you collaborate, understand the importance of teamwork. Be mindful of everything you do so that you can move the whole board forward. Don't forget to ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help, and people like to help. So I suggest in all areas of your life, ask for help. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to step up and give it to you. Also, treat yourself with kindness. Don't beat yourself up. It's interesting. When we speak to ourselves, a lot of times it's evaluative, like you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. Instead, be observational with the way you speak to yourself. This is what happened, and maybe we can learn from it, as opposed to saying you're an idiot to yourself. I hope that makes sense, because when you're kind to yourself, it helps you to be kinder to others. And that, again, elevates your morale. And finally, be flexible. I'm not as flexible as this guy, but I have to tell you that in this year particularly, and going into 2021, things are changing so rapidly. That you need to be flexible so that you can change with it and you can bend rather than break. So, of course, I want to think about what's ahead of us, especially for 2021. Everyone's been using the phrase this year, the new normal. Well, I have news for you. There is no new normal. I think the pre-COVID-19 era is what it is, and we will never be back there. So every year after this is going to be a next normal, because things will be continuing to change in all aspects of our world. So to really move yourself forward, you take a look back of this year and take a mistake audit. And what this means is look at all the mistakes you made dealing with the pandemic this year in terms of your board, in terms of your family, your relationships. What did I do wrong? And then from there, learn and say, what could I have done better? And when you do that, you can take all of that knowledge and all of that learning and bring it forward into the next year so that you can attack 2021 with optimism and positivity, because you know the mistakes you made this year and you're not going to make them again next year. So, of course, I'm a former professor from Cal State Northridge and 25 years, and homework is a thing. So I want to give you, I hope you accept it, in 2021, I want you to make 3 commitments to yourself as homework. Think about what those commitments will be. And then when 2021 rolls around, you can do that. So the first one is create a professional goal to enhance your leadership performance. Maybe it's becoming a better listener. Maybe it's learning how to model the way. Maybe it's learning how to be a better collaborator. What can you do professionally to enhance your leadership performance? The second thing I'd like you to think about is what's one professional goal that you can create a culture of excellence with your board of directors. What can you do to elevate the board even more in 2021? And finally, what's one personal goal to enhance your quality of life? Maybe it's giving yourself more spare time just to relax. Maybe it's taking up a new hobby. Maybe it's doing something, going somewhere that is safe and good. Whatever it is, make yourself a pledge that you're going to enhance your own life. I want to thank you so much for this time, and I want to encourage you to remain positive and be a positive leader, because when you do that, everything elevates. Thank you so much.
HOA organizers, how can I help you?
Is this Marcia?
Yes, it is.
Marcia, this is Sydney.
Hi, Sydney. How are you?
I'm not doing well. It is hot out here today. I came to go swimming and the pool is closed. Why is the pool closed?
Well, as you know, we're in a global pandemic, and per the advice of our legal counsel, they have advised us to keep the pool closed during this time.
Yes, but the pool has been closed for months and it's hot. I want to go swimming. I pay my dues, I pay your salary, and on top of that, I saw somebody in there last week.
I completely understand. The board is taking new and creative steps to ensure this doesn't happen again.
Well, I really hope you guys are going to figure this out, because if I see somebody in there next week, I'm going to jump in there as well.
I understand.
Okay, I hope so.
Thank you. I'll take this up with the board.
Fine.
Our next speaker is truly an amazing, wonderful speaker and really adds so much value to our industry. I'm so honored to have Stephen Tinnelly join us today. Stephen Tinnelly is the managing partner of the Tinnelly Law Group. Mr. Tinnelly's undergraduate education was received at the University of Southern California, where he graduated cum laude with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Entrepreneurship and a minor in Law and Society. He obtained his Juris Doctorate from the University of California, Los Angeles, where he focused on corporate and real estate law. Mr. Tinnelly is very active within the community association industry and devotes a substantial amount of time to educating homeowners and industry professionals about legal issues affecting California community associations. He currently serves as president for the board of directors of the Orange County Regional Chapter of the Community Association Institute, otherwise known as CAI. He has served on various CAI chapter committees, including the Publications, Education, and Legislative Support Committee. He's also a veteran with our ABCs of HOAs, having joined us before as a prominent speaker. I've also had the pleasure of speaking with him at industry events through CAI as well. It's my great honor, and I'm so privileged to welcome Stephen Tinnelly to us today, and I hope you enjoy his presentation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Netta. Happy to be here with you all today. I'm Steve Tinnelly with the Tinnelly Law Group, and I'm going to be speaking about this never-ending pandemic panic. So the information I'm going to be talking with you about today deals with enforcement and operations, some question involving meetings. I know, regardless of where you are in the state, there's some trending that we thought we were coming on the other side of things. Now it looks like there's some more restrictive limitations that are being put in place. So we're going to talk about all of those from a global point of view, and hopefully give you all some information that will be useful in managing your communities and responding to the concerns of your neighbors. So let's talk about enforcement and operations. And these were questions that our firm was initially getting when the pandemic first hit, and when everybody didn't know what was happening. We're going to shelter in place, what's going on, so on and so forth. And hopefully we thought by now that some of these things, there'd be some normalcy that's returning, and whatever normalcy that has returned, it seems like, again, we might be moving in the other direction. So all of these questions that were relevant months ago, I think are still relevant, may become even more relevant now as we move forward into the holiday season. So relaxing enforcement protocols, what the association's role is, when it should not be involved in dealing with pandemic and COVID-related issues, and then also our recreational facilities, the constant moving target. Do we open? Do we close? How do we open? Can we open? Should we open? All of that good stuff. So let's talk about enforcement and operations, relaxing enforcement protocols. We know that associations, we have governing documents, we have rules, we have use restrictions in our CC&Rs. These are important things that we need to enforce. Right? That's one of the jobs of the association. But also, we have to put that in context of what we're dealing with right now. And there might be opportunities for us to relax enforcement protocols or to really say, no, we're not going to get involved in that type of pandemic related issue because it's not the association's mandate. So what this table here shows you gives you some guidance to be able to consider these things. When to be vigilant, meaning when should we immediately address a violation of our governing documents? Unapproved construction is one thing. We don't want someone to complete building or modifying their unit or moving structural walls and wait till that work is done before we address it. It's important that we address it the second that we know about it. Parking restrictions, those are also another thing, especially in condominium communities, right, where we have a finite amount of parking spaces. We have garage use requirements and things along those lines. Right, the pandemic really does make an impact on those, and those are really important, especially in high density product types where the need for parking is more significant than a master plan community with a number of streets. And also collections, assessment collection related things. It's important, as much as we might want to empathize with members that are in our community that have fallen on hard times and might have lost employment. That's all well and good, but at the same time, as boards of directors, we need to be prepared to take the steps to make sure that we secure the debt that's owed to our association by recording liens and things along those lines. And I'll cover that in a little bit later in our talk. Types of use restrictions where we can relax enforcement. Restrictions on play equipment used on member properties, single-family home communities. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic and to this day, a homeowner had a small trampoline outside, and it's a violation of the use restrictions. But at the same time, I have a father of 4 small children. I understand we need to get the kids out of the house. And if we can allow the homeowner to maybe have something that we wouldn't have in ordinary times in order to allow them to actually live with the circumstance that we're dealing with right now, that might be an option to do that. And that's part of the broader understanding of realizing that, hey, we're community associations. We're a community of neighbors. If there's ways in which we can accommodate each other during this hard time, we should think about that. Also, violations requiring corrective maintenance. I know it's important for everybody's fences to be painted and things along those lines. But in the grand scheme of things, what we're dealing with right now and the challenges that we're associated with, we might want to relax those protocols, give people more time, more than 15 days or 30 days to address an issue. So when should the association not become involved? Homeowners calling management, right? Or calling you as the board saying somebody was throwing a party and it's in violation of a social distancing guideline and so on and so forth. Those individuals can report those concerns to the health authorities. We're not a law enforcement entity. We don't need to be enforcing those as homeowners associations. This was a novel thing, and I hear some communities are still trying to do it to facilitate shopping programs for people that don't want to get outside their unit or get outside their homes. They say, hey, we'll get the community and the HOA, the condo board will put together a shopping program to allow people to go out and shop. That is more liability exposure than the association should take on. If homeowners want to do that for their neighbors in their individual capacity, that's fine, but we shouldn't be doing that under the banner of the association. It shouldn't be an association organized thing. And then also informing residents of positive COVID cases. Our firm's position that it's not necessarily the association's mandate to do that. And of course, the disclaimer at the beginning of all these things is, hey, this is not meant to be a legal advice. Don't substitute what I'm saying for the advice of the attorney that your community is working with. And I would rely on that advice, whatever attorney you're working with. But from our perspective, we don't think it's an association's mandate when they hear that somebody might have tested positive to go tell the community all about it. So let's talk a little bit about recreation facilities. So at the time we're recording this, I don't know, at the time you're viewing this, it might change depending on the county that you are, but these are kind of the restrictions that are in place right now. And I was looking at it this morning, and if you're in LA County, it might be a little bit different for you. So pools and spas, they're only open where it can be managed or controlled to allow for limited use or periods of exclusive, and we could cover for hours covering over the details. And I'm sure you've worked with your legal counsel with where your community is located to understand all the different nuances, but this is hitting it from a very top level. Gyms and clubhouses, those should remain closed. There is some limitations, some exceptions to do outdoor gyms or outdoor facilities. If you want to to move your equipment out there, but most communities don't find that that is something that's feasible. So they're closing those at this time, just keeping them open to facilitate basic administrative functions of the association. And also parks and tot lots. I was looking at LA County before we started speaking this morning, and LA County allows parks to be open, but tot lots and playgrounds, those have to be closed currently as of the state of the order. And of course, we have to comply with the social distancing requirements during parks. So when you have all of these rules that are put in place, and as we keep moving to a purple tier, back to an orange tier, and tomorrow might be a red tier, so on and so forth, how do we tell our membership, how do we adopt new rules in order to do that? Fortunately, there's an avenue under the Civil Code that gives us, as boards of directors, the ability to adopt emergency rules without a member comment period when the circumstances change and they require it. And that's something that you also want to discuss with your association's legal counsel. So these are the recreation facilities, just kind of a broader picture that I have, especially for smaller communities. I ask, what's the liability exposure? Do we even have to open these facilities? Yeah, Steve, technically we could open our pool, but then we have to have all these different mitigation measures in place, a reservation system, an attendant that's there, and it's expensive. We don't have to, we don't have the resources to do that, and that's a challenge. And just because you might legally be able to open in some capacity, if financially it's not feasible for your community, there isn't an obligation for you to open that. And that's important to keep in mind. You as boards of directors, right, are entitled to rely on information, opinions, reports that are prepared by your counsel and your experts. So when you're talking with legal counsel and they advise you of all these different guidelines and understanding what the costs are associated with trying to keep the pool open to such a limited capacity, there's likely avenues through which you as a board, in good faith, in a manner that you believe is in the best interest of your community, can say, hey guys, as much as we'd like to open the pool, it just doesn't work out that way right now. Financially, it doesn't make sense. The liability exposure is too great. So we need to make the decision. As much as we want to be able to go out to the pool right now, it's just not going to work for our community. And on that point too, another issue that we're getting, and you're probably dealing with this challenge, you'll have members ask you, well, if the pools are closed, if the recreational facilities are closed, if the gyms are closed, I'm not going to pay my dues. This is another issue you want to talk to your legal counsel about, but the big picture is, and this is one of the reasons why I don't like using the term dues. I like using the term assessments. When someone thinks dues, they think it's a membership dues, like a CrossFit gym, to where if the gym's closed, I don't have to pay my membership dues. An assessment is a different thing. Just because the pool might be closed doesn't mean we don't have to pay for the maintenance. Doesn't mean we don't have to pay for the insurance policies that cover us from liability. Doesn't mean we have to pay for landscaping and all these other things. Those are all fixed expenses. So regardless of whether our pool is closed right now because of a pandemic, or it might be closed in the future because we're doing a remodeling job, so on and so forth, none of that matters. The assessments still need to be paid. And having that type of open and upfront communication with your membership, honestly, in our experience, it's been good throughout this process, just letting them know ahead of time. You have to pay your assessments, here are the reasons why, and it mitigates the amount of delinquencies that your community might face, which is better for the homeowner, it's better for your community, because otherwise all you're doing is just spending more money on collection actions that nobody really wants to do. So moving on, let's talk about meetings, board meetings during shelter in place. I know it's not technically shelter in place anymore, but we might be moving back to that. And even if we're not, but social distancing is still here to stay. How do we continue to conduct our board meetings, not only during this pandemic and the next few months and whatever 2021 has in store for us, as well as our annual meetings as well. So board meetings, let's talk about the Open Meeting Act. Those of you that are watching, that are seasoned board members, you already know, you probably have the Open Meeting Act ingrained in your head, and I'll just cover it from a top level here. The board cannot act on an item of business outside of a board meeting. In order for the board to act, there has to be a board meeting, right? And if it's a certain matter that can only be discussed or acted upon by the board in an open board meeting, well, members have the right to attend and address the board at an open session. Right? Which obviously presents challenges because we're all segregated, we're in different places, we're working from home, there's social distancing, and so on and so forth. And the Open Meeting Act also allows the board to adjourn to executive session to consider and act upon specific type of matters. These are your executive session matters. This table here gives you really a top level breakdown of executive session versus open session. On the left, legal matters, contract matters, so on and so forth. But the big picture here is No member attendance rights for executive session. Members don't come to executive session. That's just for the board and for management and whatever, your legal counsel might be in attendance with you at executive session as well. Under the current state of the law, executive session may be held entirely by teleconference or video conference. So the word we learned all this year, right? Zoom, right? We've been Zooming. We've been doing these executive sessions. No problems under the law to do that. And thank goodness we have these video conferencing tools. I know in my experience, it's actually been nice to learn these tools because we found that our meetings are going more effectively and we're not paying for travel time. And we're able to facilitate a more productive dialogue with the directors because they don't have to drive to a central meeting place or leave their units or leave their homes. Then we have open session, which is decisions to record assessment liens. Those have to be done in open session. And then everything else that can't be discussed in executive has to be done in open session. But the challenge is doing an open session over a Zoom or a teleconference is that the code currently requires, and when I say the code, the Davis-Sterling Act, at least one physical location for members to attend and observe and listen to the board. That's under the current state of the code. So during this whole process, when we've been in shelter in place and so on and so forth, what have we been doing to deal with executive session and dealing with open session? So executive session, like I mentioned on the last slide, teleconference is okay, video conference, Zoom is okay, no member attendance rights, except if you have a member who's the subject to a hearing, you're calling them to a hearing in executive session, you have the member Zoom in. So we like Zoom or GoToMeeting. All these tools have, in our experience, been very effective in us being able to conduct our executive session meetings. But then the question has been, well, what about open session? All right, again, if we need to record liens, certain financial review requirements, the law requires us to do those under open session. And during this, when shelter in place, what do? We've still been doing open session meetings over Zoom. Technically, the law doesn't allow for that because we need one physical location. And we as industry attorneys were put in this interesting position to try to advise our clients, do we break the law? Do we not break the law? And we think, well, as long as we do this Zoom, but we further the intent of what the Open Meeting Act is. And what is the intent? Board members need to be able to have this open session meeting with the membership having the ability to attend and observe and address the board during open forum. Well, we can do that over Zoom. And we've been utilizing that as a tool. And I have a bullet point here that some of our board member clients have really enjoyed it because you have those fun members that come to the meeting and they don't want to stop talking after their time is done and they go off on a tangent, and we have that ability to hit that beautiful little mute button and move on to the next person. So can we continue to do Zoom forever? The answer is we don't know. I do know that the California Law Review Commission is currently considering legislation to remove the one physical location requirement because in reality, through technology, we have the ability to further the intent, to satisfy the intent of the Open Meeting Act, to have members patch into a meeting, and we don't need to do that physically. And in this day and age and dealing with this pandemic, it's more beneficial that we don't. So this following slide here, this last slide, during shelter in place, post shelter in place, executive session meetings, utilize those. If you need to conduct open sessions, limit those and make sure that you have those only scheduled for when you have to do those open session items, and utilize Zoom. Keep in mind too that a lot of what the board does and acts upon can be delegated to management, right? Certain expenditures, certain things. And once those delegations are made, then no board meeting is ultimately required. So if there are options now to where you can give management a little bit more authority to do some things and thus remove the need for the board to meet as often, that's a conversation that you might want to have with management as well. So even during the social distancing requirement, still utilize video conferencing. I don't imagine that this is going to go away at all. I see no reason why the legislature wouldn't allow for this to continue, especially if they're the ones keeping us with all these strict orders, but we'll see what happens. So currently the case is, at least for our clients, we're still utilizing electronic meetings, both for executive session and open session. Your community's legal counsel may have a different perspective, however, and it's important for you to follow your community's legal counsel. Wrapping up here, annual meetings, director elections, right? We don't need to postpone these, even though the social distancing requirements and so on and so forth. And why is that? We had some clients say, well, for the ballot counting meeting, we need to have, the law requires us to have a physical location and the members for the members to observe the ballot tabulation. And how do we do that when we have smaller facilities and the social distancing requirement? People are worried about masks, so on and so forth. we're still utilizing Zoom in order to do those. And we'll have the inspector of elections set up a Zoom, and there's a feed, and people can observe the ballot tabulation even though they're not physically there. So we still don't see a need, regardless of whether if we go back into a more restrictive tier and we might have to stay at home again, there really shouldn't be a need to postpone the annual meetings. If you must postpone, there are some certain procedures that you can utilize under the code. You usually conduct it within 60 days and your directors will continue to serve. And these are all nuances that you can discuss with your legal counsel. But big picture, there should be no reason for a community to have to delay their annual meetings, even though we had some new procedures that were at the beginning of the year, SB 323, rewriting election rules. This slide contains some of our resources on it. If you have questions regarding director elections, we're still getting them, as well as if you wanted to build an election timeline to help you plan for when you have to conduct your next election. These links are here and they're available for you. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I hope you learned some information. Be well and stay safe, and we'll see you next year.
All right, everyone. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Oh, thank God. Got a long commute back home. Oh, all right. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, 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 oh. Oh. All right, let's see what we got on the old boob tube. It's raining? What, roof leak? It's raining sideways? Why is there hail in California? Oh, the HOA is gonna hear about this. They never take care of anything. Ah! Ah! Marsha!
I am so excited to introduce Aaron Antis with Antis Roofing to all of you today. Aaron Antis, Vice President of Sales and Field Operations, joined the company in 2007 as a trainee roofer and has trained and worked in all the company's core business departments since then. Aaron is the nephew of founder and CEO Charles Antis. Well poised to lead Antis Roofing in his leadership role, Aaron possesses deep knowledge about roofing and the homeowners association industry, as well as a keen ability to be an expert partner to board of directors and community managers addressing the maintenance, repair, and replacement decisions of one of the biggest assets in the communities, their roofs. He has developed and led training programs offered to community association managers and board members. In 2018, the National Roofing Contractors Association selected Aaron as one of 36 emerging leaders in the roofing industry to attend NRCA University's Future Executive Institute at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, taught by Northwestern University professors. In 2019, Aaron was recognized as one of the Irvine Chamber of Commerce 40 Under 40 honorees. We're truly lucky to have him join us here today. It's always a pleasure to work with Antis Roofing and specifically Aaron Antis, and he is an authority in roofing. Thank you, and let me introduce and welcome Aaron Antis.
Hello, my name is Aaron Antis. I'm with Antis Roofing and Waterproofing, and I've been asked by HOA organizers to talk a little bit about maintenance. And so I'm actually going to, if I can here, share my screen and talk a little bit about maintenance with you. So getting ahead, the importance of preventative maintenance, and that's exactly what I was asked to talk about by HOA organizers. So we're going to go through that in some level of detail here. So why do maintenance? It's important to understand in the first place, why even consider doing maintenance? So properly performed maintenance will add years of life to the roofing system. So basically, I'm going to jump towards the end of my presentation or one of the next slides. And basically, we compare it to a car. It's like changing the oil in your car. If you don't change the oil in your car, or if you change the oil in your car with bad oil or low performing oil, then the system that you have in your car, the engine, isn't going to last anywhere near as long as it possibly could if it is maintained and replaced on a regular basis. And that's all the parts and components that go with that, the oil filter and all of that. It's important to understand that lots of communities do nothing with regards to maintenance. And so I am asking you, and I'm imploring you as a board and as part of your due diligence, to do maintenance, to do something, to gather that information and actually take action to get ahead and take care of your community so you aren't personally held liable. And that goes on to the next bullet: cover yourself in case of multiple leak scenarios. So if you do have leaks going on in your community, or your roofs are getting older, if you are doing maintenance, then you can protect yourself when homeowners come back at you and say, you didn't do anything. Why am I having leaks? I can't believe you guys aren't actually taking care of the roofs. No. We've done roof maintenance, and we did a really good, deep maintenance on the roof to really take care of it and extend the life as much as possible. Unfortunately, you're one of the ones that has had a leak. We're going to go ahead and take care of that for you. Do everything you can to cover yourself. And then if you're in a situation, especially where your roof is getting extremely old and it really is time to be replaced, but you can't because you don't have the money, which is extremely common, let me be clear, maintenance becomes even more important. And we'll talk a little bit more, but there are differences in maintenances, and it's important that you really look through the scopes of work that you're being provided, the proposals that you're being provided, ask clarifying questions, and really understand everything that's going into your roof maintenance. Because if you're getting a low price, there's probably a reason for that. And it makes it a little bit harder for you to basically be able to say to your community that you did everything you possibly could to extend the life before you needed a re-roof, and kind of cover yourself that way. So a very detailed maintenance at the very end of the roof life it becomes even more important. Roof maintenance also allows the roofer to walk basically every square inch of that roof and detect minor problems before they become major issues. Maintenance also minimizes the amount of calls that you get from distressed homeowners. So you're not going to have all of these homeowners calling in frustrated with leaks, and you're having to not only get somebody out there to stop the leak, but you're having to do a permanent repair to stop the leak permanently. And then you're probably having to pay for interior damages if that's what's in your CC&Rs. And that just becomes extremely costly when the source of that leak might have been from a $3 tile that needed to be replaced and a little bit of underlayment that could have been taken care of. So with the maintenance, we want you to avoid the cost of those high roof repairs now by getting ahead of it and spending some money that doesn't, seem maybe necessarily a good reason why at the beginning. But then if you were to have not done it, then the rains came and all of a sudden you have dozens and dozens of leaks, then the maintenance becomes a lot more justifiable at that point. And then also the reason for doing maintenance is because you avoid the high cost of roof replacement later. And what I mean by that is a little bit of water coming in, maybe undetected or likely undetected, not actually causing a leak, as in it gets absorbed by the insulation, or it just runs a little bit down the wood, down the joist, down the beams, down any part of the wood framing, and all of a sudden it's rotting it out. And you don't know that that's happening. And so when it comes up time for replacement, all of a sudden you have massive change orders. Instead of a 10 or 15% average replacement, you're looking at 30, 40, 50% of the cost of roof replacement all of a sudden being thrown into structural damage issues. And so that's what we're trying to avoid when we're doing maintenance. And again, the reason why an aggressive regular maintenance is important. So we talked a little bit about this, really understand the scope of the work, what is being detailed. Do you understand it? Are there any ways that shortcuts could be taken in that, as in, hey, we're going to seal pipes. Well, how are you going to seal pipes? What are you going to seal pipes with? Are you going to coat that? Are you going to reinforce that? Are you going to scrape the old material off? All of that stuff goes into the cost and also the longevity of that roofing system. And every nail matters. So every bit of, and that's a phrase we have in our company, every bit of maintenance work that goes into it, every detail is extremely important to the longevity of that system. A leak at these pipes in this picture right here at the top, coming in a little bit of water and then running down your roofing system slowly over time, rotting out the underlayment can cause a massive thousands and tens of thousands of dollars worth of a leak that could have been prevented by doing a couple dollars worth of maintenance on an annual basis in that area. And you can read, what is required when you want to request proposals. I recommend that you meet your contractors, you have discussions about it, you have a deep understanding of exactly what they're going to be doing. And I know that takes time, but that time, a little bit of time and a little bit of money early on will save you a ton of time and a ton of pain and a ton of money in the long run. So please put in the time at the beginning, get to know your roofing contractor through and through, in and out, every detail if at all possible. Roof maintenance should also be done on an annual basis. Very rarely is there a community that can do it every couple of years, or we would recommend that they do it every couple of years. If you have a tile or a flat roof system, we recommend that must be done annually. Some communities, if they're along a golf course, at least those sections that are right along the golf course should be done probably more than once a year, because the amount of broken tiles or penetrations or whatever might come from those flying golf balls occur, and you need to protect your roof. It's also important to understand that just because you asked for roof proposals and you reviewed maintenances, but you did nothing, that is not doing your due diligence. That is not doing what is recommended in the roofing industry by the NRCA, which is the governing body of roofing in the nation and actually internationally. And so it is very important that you not only solicit bids, but you actually do something, because the proposals you'll often see in there's photos that will show exactly what needs to be done. And if you're not doing something, you are basically admitting that you neglected to take care of the roofs. And so we implore you to do maintenance as regularly as possible. When is the best time to do maintenance? That is anywhere from July to December. If you have a lot of tree growth, then pushing it towards the latter end of that time frame is really important, so that the leaves have fallen down and can be collected at the same time as the roof maintenance is being done. But sometimes getting it done in July or August is great as well, because you beat the rush. You might be able to get a price break as part of that. And that goes to that second bullet about the off months. So being able to do it a little bit sooner sometimes is great as well. And if you don't do maintenance, kind of like we talked about before, get leaks, you get all these costs with temporary repairs, tarping, and then the permanent repairs. You get angry homeowners, they're frustrated, they're questioning what you're actually doing on the board, what the decisions you're making. So that causes you a lot more pain. You have costly roof repairs, costly interior repairs. You have to figure out, does the HOA cover this, or does the homeowner cover that? And then all the calls, emails, everything that your manager gets slugged through, and they can't work actually proactively for you and your community anymore. They're working reactively, trying to chase things around and make sure it's actually being taken care of. And then dry rot and structural damage as well as a concern. So I'm going to quickly plow through these. These are some of the things that you should see in your maintenance scopes. A lot of it is ignored in scopes. And so make sure that every little leak-prone area is actually included in your maintenance scope. So plumbing pipes, what work is actually going to be done on that? Not just sealing it up, that's a totally gray area, but how are you going to actually do that? Roof jacks, flashings, slipped tiles, broken tiles, open Z-bar flashings. A lot of these things, again, look tiny, don't seem like they're going to be an issue, but can actually cause some serious damage long term. Coping metal joints, the terminations, transitions at the ends or at the edges of your roofing system. Wood fascia and trim doesn't seem like much, but that can actually cause leaking and cause a problem for you. Satellite dish penetrations, the dish mounts that are left behind. Some of these things you won't even know, you won't even see that they're actually there unless a roof maintenance inspection is completed. And then all of this is to avoid things like this that we see. These are our actual pictures. And you can see just the kinds of leaks that occur around electrical units. And we haven't seen anything, an electrical fire in the hundreds of thousands of leaks that we've solved. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't scare the homeowners. And all of a sudden you have an irate and scared homeowner as well calling in. Also along that flat roof on the left-hand picture right there. I mean, that is massive ponding. We've seen little bullet holes in 3-story buildings, a little hole like that with all that water up there coming in consistently causes massive flooding through 3 stories. And so if you have a flat roof, especially if it's multi-story, you need to be doing maintenance every single year, bar none. Do not even ask the question. You will otherwise have some very likely serious issues if you don't. And then avoiding doing tarping middle of the night, the cost to do that. I mean, it's a lot to get somebody out there in the middle of the night to take care of that, to take the risk on in the middle of the rain, which we do, but it's a lot less costly than actually waiting it out often and having to pay the extra damages that occur from the restoration. And you're avoiding the costly permanent repairs, large areas being open because now there's a leak, whereas, it might have started from a plumbing pipe, but it's been running down the roof for months, years, and causing damage. And so now we need to tear up a big area. And then interior repairs that you're getting as a result of that as well. Gutter downspout roof cleaning is important. That's part of maintenance. Make sure to clarify that you want both maintenance and roof gutter downspout cleaning. You can see here that this debris causes massive damming, ponding water, and doesn't allow the water to get off the roof, which standing water, that's a ton of weight, a ton of problems that you're likely going to have. And that should be done with the maintenance, if at all possible, after the tree trimming. With the maintenance saves time, saves money. And then just depending on the amount of tree growth, you're at least doing that annually. A lot of communities might do sectional gutter downspout roof cleaning as well, just to make sure to not have any issues throughout the year. And then of course your any kind of weather damages, wind or trees falling on the roof or hail, if we get that occasionally, that can cause some serious issues. So pitch on Antis, why Antis for maintenance. You'll see it in our specification. It's unmatched. It's bulletproof, as we like to say, very detailed. We have superior customer service. We have, of course, like everybody else, probably accessible foremen and supervisors, but we have 4 to 6 times the office staff. So this especially comes into play during the rains. And we photo document everything. Every nail matters. Every little detail matters. If I can't prove that I did something, then I'm going to own it. If there's any kind of an issue. And then we have 24-hour emergency response. You get a live Antis rep. You don't get an after hours service as part of that. And then we've only serviced homeowners associations for 31 years. We know how to deal with all the nuances of HOAs. And then, of course, we'll flyer the community. We're very communicative. If there's ever an issue, you can reach out. We're happy to take care of that. We can customize these flyers with you. And with that, I'll end. Appreciate the opportunity to present. And we look forward to you using us here at Antis Roofing and Waterproofing for your maintenance needs. Happy to come on site and help you in any way that we can. Thank you.
So Ruby, I was thinking what we can do is get some LED lighting for the clubhouse, so we'll save money on electricity, going green. Yes.
I love that idea. I also thought about a couple of succulents around the pool area.
I love it. We'll save water.
Yes, drought resistant.
Oh my God, I'm really excited for this meeting.
Too.
We're going to save a lot of money.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Hey, Marcia.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm so excited for a green meeting.
Us too. We were just... No, you're fine. We're just passing forth some ideas. So what do you have?
Okay, so I actually wanted to tell you guys how excited I am. I started going green. eating green giant, eating green foods, just green everything. But
Wow.
I wanted to float a couple ideas by you.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I was thinking for the clubhouse, we could paint it Later Gator. And for the inside, we can paint it vegetation. What do you guys think?
I think that's lovely, but I don't think that's the direction we were really going with
No?
this. No.
What were you guys thinking?
Yeah, so that's not really what going green is,
Oh,
right?
well,
No, I don't want to disappoint you. You know,
Okay.
we love your ideas,
Yes,
right, Ruby? Like, we
awesome.
love
Oh,
it,
thank you.
and we're really proud that you have so much enthusiasm about this. This is going to be wonderful. So, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're happy about it. So I actually have a green tuxedo for you in the car so you can wear it at the board meeting. Just give me a second. I'll bring it right back.
Oh, green tuxedo.
Our next speaker today is Gabriel Anguiano, and he is joining us with Stay Green Landscaping. He is the operations manager for the Los Angeles division of Stay Green, and Stay Green is a prominent landscape company serving Southern California since 1970. Gabriel is somebody that we as a company work with quite often, and he really is an authority on all things landscaping. He's got some really great information to share with us today. So I'm really excited to introduce Gabriel to all of you.
Thank you, Netta. My name is Gabriel Anguiano, and I'm the branch manager for Stay Green Landscaping. Stay Green Landscaping has been in business for 50 years, serving the communities of Southern California. My territory is Los Angeles and Orange County. Stay Green is a family-oriented business that has been around for 50 years. Stay Green's purpose is we preserve nature. We preserve the plants. We provide high quality landscaping to induce natural growing healthy plants. SGI's passion is the people and the plants, our team members, our clients, and our partners. SGI's values is teamwork, integrity, accountability, and achievement. And we've always tried to maintain a high standard in each one of these values. SGI's mission statement, Stay Green, Inc. is committed to being the leader in providing professional landscape service, resulting in the highest level of client satisfaction. SGI's vision statement is Stay Green, Inc. will be the leading provider of complete professional landscape services and our industry's employer of choice in Southern California. SGI's niche is full service landscape and tree care service. SGI's clients are from commercial, educational, healthcare, hospitality, religious, multifamily home owners associations, public works, retail, and sports and leisure. SGI prosperity statement is we provide safe, attractive landscape environment that enhances the property value while protecting the plants. We are a natural choice for all your landscaping needs. SGI is composed of 70% of contracts, meaning recurring contracts, and 30% of work orders. Who are our clients? HOAs, composed of 33%, and 34% is our government and municipalities. We provide service for HOAs, sports and leisures, and as you can see, we have a vast majority of clients in different fields. Our SGI over years, our client retention versus quality inspections have always increased. In 2020, our client retention is above 95%, telling that we do provide what we say and we do what we mean. One of the differences between us and the other competitors is our management. Our management is out in the field providing professional opinion to our clients. Stay Green has been awarded multiple awards throughout the year. Top 150 companies, best of 2020. We were awarded a top 100 company in the state. We have won a National Association's Landscape Professionals Safety Award winner. We've also been awarded first and second place in a lot of our communities that we've entered in state, national, and local competitions. Technology and innovation. At Stay Green, we believe in technology, and technology has allowed us to better service our clients. We use relief videos. Relief videos are intended for our account managers to do site visits and provide a detailed map of where we walk, what we see in your communities. In these times with COVID, I know we can't do a lot of one-on-ones with walks with our clients. So we provide this on a weekly basis for our clients to see how the conditions of every property. We also have geotabs, meaning we go out to your properties, we geotab each tree on your property. We provide a detailed explanation of every service that's been provided to that tree, every chemical treatment, any tree trimming, anything historical that goes onto that tree that's downloaded into an app, and you have full access to see that. We've also partnered up with Weathermatic, a leader in irrigation controllers. The smart controllers allows us to better control and manage your water. The two biggest items in a community is the landscaping bill and the water bill. And we like to take pride and manage both for you, meaning less headaches. We've allowed associations to save hundreds of thousands of dollars each year by using Weathermatic. Weathermatic goes in and adjusts itself every day and putting out the exact amount of water that the plants need to strive and survive. We also have Fleet Sharp, which geotabs all our trucks and routes for better service. At SGI, we're also a family-oriented company, which we like to take care of our team members. We always do Easter baskets for families and team members. We have Halloween contests for the crew, and it's just another way for us to be more connected with our employees. At SGI, we do a lot of training. This year, we've done social distancing, so our strategic planning for the whole year was with social distancing in mind, and it was outdoors. This year's NLU, which is an association of like-minded companies, was done virtually for social distancing. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Gabriel Anguiano, representing Stay Green, which should be the landscaping company of choice.
All right, board. We are now in our agenda for discussing whether we're going to file a claim on a roof leak at unit 5555. Matt, can you tell us a little bit what happened?
Huge roof leak. The roof almost caved in. Big water loss. Gotta address it.
Another roof leak?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
That's
right.
terrible. I don't even think we could file another claim. I think we filed too many in the last year or so.
You know, I have to agree with Ruby. Do you remember when Mrs. Jones on the 10th floor, she did a cannonball into her waterbed with her stilettos for some reason, and it leaked down all 10 units below her. That was just awful. It was a terrible water loss. I really don't think we can file an insurance claim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my unit was one of the ones that were affected. But also we filed the claim when that horse ran through the front window of the building and shattered it. And it cost us so much money to have that repaired.
That's true. And remember back in October, I think, there was that early bird special rave where only seniors were invited, and the sprinklers or the sparklers or whatever got out of control, set the whole thing on fire. That was about $50,000 worth of damage right there.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. That was a great party. I was invited. But yeah, that was a big party. Yeah. Okay, well, let's take a vote. All in favor for filing the claim?
I'm still
opposed?
not in favor. No,
Me neither.
I'm not in favor. I think it's too much of a risk to lose our insurance and also an increase in the premium. So I vote no.
Okay, then we need to figure out how we're going to pay for this damage.
Our next speaker is somebody who is a veteran to our ABCs of HOAs. In fact, he joined us in our very first ABCs of HOAs, as well as several others. I am so honored and pleased to announce and welcome Demetrios Xanthos. He is the principal of SAX Insurance Agency. 2021 will represent SAX's 19th year servicing the HOA marketplace. SAX Insurance Agency currently services residential associations in 6 states: California, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, and Idaho. Demetrios has a bachelor's in economics and a master in finance. He spent the first 12 years of his professional career working for 2 Fortune 500 companies. Demetrios opened SAX Insurance Agency upon leaving corporate America and quickly integrated himself with industry affiliations such as CAI, CACM, and BIA. Over the years, he has certified himself to lead instruction and education programs for these industry leaders. SAX Insurance Agency is an independent agency which has direct appointments with the largest insurance companies in the world and special carriers who have crafted specific policies to address the unique exposures associated with the HOA marketplace. I'd like to also personally thank Demetrios and SAX Insurance. As I mentioned, they have not only participated as speakers in several of our ABCs of HOAs, but have been one of our main sponsors, which has afforded us the opportunity to present this information to you. Demetrios, thank you again for joining us, and let's hear your presentation about insurance.
Netta, thank you for the introduction, and as always, it's really a pleasure to be with you and the folks in the audience. I am Demetrios Xanthos, principal of SAX Insurance Agency. And Netta has asked me today to speak to you about whether to file a claim or not, what exactly should be the evaluation criteria for the board in evaluating when to file a claim, and then what variables do we take into consideration? Deductible, insurable interest, where did this occur? And so, throughout the years, we've discussed that these programs, to deeply get into this topic, could be a 1, 2, 3 hour presentation, but we have 15 minutes together. And so what I want to remind all of the board members in the audience is you have several different policies doing several different things. You have property, general liability, directors and officer, umbrella, excess, crime, fidelity, as well as you might carry flood, earthquake, or various forms of catastrophic. And so filing a claim on any one of those topics is uniquely different. When it comes to property, it's going to be first-party property of the association, which can come in several different forms depending on your governing documents, and we're going to explore that. As it relates to a general liability claim, this is going to be solely focused on the common area of the association. And all of you in the audience have varying forms of common area. Some of you just might have greenbelt. Some of you might have sidewalks. Some of you might be mid-rise, high-rise, might be condo. You might have elevators, stairwells, exercise rooms. And so, as you can see, that creates a variety of different claim opportunity. Obviously with your directors and officers, that has to do with allegations brought against the board, alleging some sort of negligence in the way you're directing the association. So what I'm going to focus on today over the next 10 minutes is a first-party property claim. I'm going to focus on a first-party property claim as it relates to water. So we're going to take a situation. We've got a condo owner in a unit that contacts management saying he or she has experienced a water loss in the unit. Now, the variables we first need to review is, what do the insurance section of the governing documents say are the association's insurable interest? And the reason that's so important is to all of you out there, you all have a unique set of governing documents. And so we'll take all 3 scenarios. In one scenario, your governing documents might say that the HOA has an insurable interest up to unfinished drywall and electrical and plumbing stub out. That's commonly known as a bare walls policy. Many of them write that they have an insurable interest up to a standard interior as installed by the declarant. Now, over time, and we've talked about this topic before, those can become very problematic because unit owners do what? They make changes to their unit, and normally they make upgrades to their unit. The last one, and it's very rare, but I have seen it, and it's in older governing documents, places the burden of the association and the entire unit, including improvements, on the HOA. Again, that might seem extreme, but I have experienced governing documents that are responsible for the entire interior. So, to our example, a water loss in a unit. If it is under the bare walls policy and the association has a $10,000 deductible, it's likely that the interests of the association impacted will not meet the association's deductible. But before we can just not disregard, because I think that's the wrong word, but tell the unit owner that there's really no assistance for them under the association's policy, we need to be conscious of the fact that each homeowner pays his or her monthly assessments, and part of those monthly assessments goes towards the association's insurance. So they have a legal right to the insurance afforded to the HOA. And in many cases, the carriers insuring the unit owner will require a declination from the association's insurance to get involved. And I will tell you, and I know I've got some clients in the audience, it's very frustrating when you know that your insurance will not be involved in the claim, but yet I'm instructing you to file a claim on behalf of your unit owner so that your unit owner can get the proper documentation so that their HO6 policy will step up and remedy them. And again, I want to impress, that has to be one of the most frustrating situations, but please understand, it will be a claim, it will be closed, and it will show as a zero payout and have no impact on your insurance. Moving to the next scenario where the HOA does bear some type of interior exposure. For this example, let's say initially installed flooring, cabinetry, but exclusive of wall coverings. Again, we need to take that deductible into account. Is it $2,500? Is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? Hopefully, the unit owner gives the manager access so that we can, at least from the water remediation company, determine an approximate exposure so that that exposure can say, hey, look, we're looking at a minimum of $30,000 loss. Your association's deductible is $10,000. It looks like a majority of the things impacted you have an insurable interest in per the governing documents, and we really need to file a claim and file it quickly for your unit owner. I have experienced many scenarios where the exposure and the loss almost is very close, within hundreds or thousands of dollars of the association's deductible. In that scenario, working with your insurance professional, you should really determine, does it economically make sense to file a claim to have the association receive a check for $1,500, $1,800? I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I think your insurance professional can explain to you the impact that type of loss is going to have on your policy. Now, without completely going off the rails, and we've discussed this before in open forum, and I just want to plant the seed. Typically, the way you are evaluated as a client by an insurance company is they take the total premiums that you've paid for 3 consecutive years, and they divide that by the claims in which you've filed. So obviously, if you have a smaller percentage, you're in very good shape. If, for example, over a 3-year period, you've paid insurance company A $57,000, but in the same period, you've filed claims for $60,000, you can quickly see that you're going to have a very poor loss ratio. And some of you might have experienced either A, significant increases, or possibly a non-renewal. Again, sticking to what Netta and HOA wanted me to discuss, this is something where your insurance professional, he or she, should be able to lead you into what kind of situation this type of claim can have on your insurance. The last scenario we discussed was potentially an HOA which has extensive exposure to the interior of the unit. In this particular case, again, we still want to ascertain, what does the claim value look like? Is it in excess of the association's deductible? And would it be prudent to either handle in-house or file a claim? Now, again, there's a lot of deliberation around what happened, why did it happen, who caused it, and this is where I would like the board members and membership in the I want to say audience, right? You're streaming at home, to remember that a majority of your governing documents are written on the platform of a mutual waiver of subrogation, which means regardless of cause, each party is responsible for their own insurable interest. Now, again, you may have already heard from our friend Adrian Adams, and for those of you who've attended in the past, he kind of emphasized that, that language is really there to protect the unit owner. Because if the unit owner is the cause of the fire or water loss that damages 3/4 of the building, this language inhibits the HOA from pursuing that unit owner for that full amount. Conversely, if it's an HOA generated loss, a burst pipe in a common area, this mutual waiver of subrogation affords that the unit owner can't pursue the HOA for things that you don't have an interest in, their personal property, potentially their improvements, potentially anything inside their unit if you are in a bare walls policy. I think, the last thing that I want to focus on in this conversation is, and I've said this for years to everyone, every insurance policy is not created equal, meaning every insurance company, whether it be Travelers, Philadelphia Insurance, AmTrust, State Farm, Farmers, on and on and on, Allied Insurance, Liberty Mutual, they all have specific policy language in their insuring agreement. And so we have to remember that that's going to dictate how the insurance company sees how the insurance is triggered. And again, you really can't evaluate your specific claim without interacting with your current insurance professional, who I'm sure is knowledgeable about the carrier and the insurance policy they've put in place for you and how their insuring agreement works. Last, I want to close with, over the last 10, 12 minutes I've been speaking, in no way, shape, or form am I advocating to not file a claim on behalf of a unit owner when the association clearly has an insurable interest. What I would say to everyone out there is, within a 24 to 48 hour period. Hopefully, you can garner enough information about what occurred, when it occurred, what approximately appears to be impacted, what approximately appears to be the costs associated, and then interact with your property manager and your insurance agent, he or she, and use the very simple steps I've discussed to determine, does it make sense to file a claim? A, does the association have an insurable interest in what was impacted? B, do we have a sense of what those costs are? C, do those costs equal or greatly exceed the association's deductible? And last but not least, what is the best course of option for the association and the unit owner? So once again, I'm really thankful to be with you again, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy, and I know we're all going to get through these trying times. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Netta. How can I help you?
Netta, this is Earl from Happy Place HOA. Once again, unhappy.
Okay, Earl. I know we just spoke about Marcia, but I haven't had a chance
No,
to...
we're not talking about Marcia. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's raining outside, and this planter that you guys have outside of my unit is leaking inside of my unit.
Are you sure that's what's happening?
Am I sure? Do I see water coming through my wall? Yes, I'm sure.
Okay, we'll get somebody out. How does tomorrow look for you?
Tomorrow? No, Netta, it's leaking right this second. I don't think you understand. It is raining cats and dogs in here.
Okay, thank you for painting a very vivid picture. I will make sure that we have somebody over as soon as possible. All right, Earl?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our final speaker in our breakout room today, which I'd like to say is last but certainly not least, Allan Lauenstein with Trifecta Construction. Allan is actually the principal of Trifecta Construction, and he comes with decades of experience in construction services. Prior to forming and founding Trifecta Construction, Allan worked with a prominent painting company. Allan is not just a friend and good-tempered. He is a wealth, or has a wealth of information all about construction services. I'd like to welcome Allan, and we really want to hear from you today. Thank you so much.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Allan Lauenstein, and I'm with Trifecta Painting and Construction. We're a fully licensed painting and general contractor that has been servicing the HOA industry for over 15 years. While we offer a multitude of services for the HOA industry, today I'll be focusing on your guide to walkway and planter waterproofing. So you might ask, what is waterproofing? So let's first start off by getting a good idea of what that is. Waterproofing is generally known as a membrane system that's put in place to prevent water from penetrating a general area. While there are many forms of and applications of waterproofing, this presentation is geared towards walkable and planter waterproofing at your community. So the first question is, why do I need it? Well, water made the Grand Canyon, and it can cause a lot of damage, as you know, to interior units or common area. So the first thing is going to be protection from that water damage. Secondly, it's going to be durability for use. A lot of the areas that we're going to be discussing today are you can go ahead and walk on. And we need to make sure that's durable enough for not only you to walk on, but for everyone in the association or even some furniture and so forth. And the last one is going to be beautification of your HOA's common area. As you know, when you go through and do painting or other larger capital expense projects, a lot of the times you're trying to uplift the community and make it worth, let's say, more money. So with that, this could be achieved through waterproofing as well. Generally, there's going to be two types of waterproofing that you're going to see regarding these planter or walkable surfaces. The first one's going to be a fiberglass waterproofing system, which is fiberglass resin with concrete layers that form a temporary water barrier. This is the gold standard when it comes to HOA, and it's very, very durable and can last a very long time. The second type is going to be urethane, which is a liquid applied coating to form a temporary water barrier. These are slightly more economical and they are liquid applied. So if you're dealing with large areas and you're looking for a little bit more economies of scale, there's other options in the urethane category. I will start off, when we're talking about floor coatings and floor waterproofing systems, we need to make sure that you realize that these are not pool coatings. So the general idea behind waterproofing of floors and walkways is that those systems are made to deter water from penetrating the surface for 24 to 48 hours, meaning the water needs to find its way to either drains or off the deck area, let's say into a planter, before it dries. So a lot of times you see major issues where there's missloping and water isn't getting to where it needs to go. So once again, waterproofing are not pool coatings. And general lifespans, which I'll touch on a few more specific bases, are going to be 15 to 20 years for walkable surfaces, as long as you're maintaining that about every 5 years with a licensed contractor. And with planters could be anywhere between 10 and 20 years, as long as you're working with your landscaping professional to make sure that you're putting the right foliage and the right plants in there that aren't going to damage the waterproofing prematurely. To start off, we're going to talk about podium decks. I know this doesn't apply to everyone watching today, but it will impact the majority of the associations found in Los Angeles. As an example, here's a picture of a podium deck in an association that we do work for. This is basically an underground parking garage with a concrete slab, and then the buildings are built above. Podium slabs are extremely common, and let's go and give you a quick definition. It's the base of a building in which a parking garage is under a structural concrete slab. Please note that when looking at concrete slabs, there's rebar. And rebar is really the bones of the association. So when we're talking about waterproofing, we're really trying to prevent the water from getting into the bones and rusting that rebar. Because without the rebar, your associations really don't have any strength to last time. So when looking at podium decks, some of the common hazards or deterioration to look out for include the following: subterranean parking garage pitting of the concrete ceiling or efflorescence on the ceiling. As an example, I've provided a couple pictures here for an association that we're working with. This is where water's gotten in through the top of the slab and it's caused the rebar to rust, and we could say spall, which is expand, which causes the concrete on the bottom of the deck to expand and crack off. This is showing signs of structural deficiencies due to incorrect waterproofing or non-maintained waterproofing over the top. Next, we're going to be looking at visibly cracked or deteriorated walking surfaces. So here, once again, is an example of a urethane system that's really broken down over the time and hasn't been maintained by the association for the long haul. And the third example would be absence of drainage or pooling water or poor sloping. Once again, we identified that waterproofing systems are not pool coating systems. So in this example right here, you can see that water's actually pooling right next to the planter and isn't getting to any type of drains or a leading edge, causing this what we call limescale buildup. Another example over here is efflorescence. If you have these corrugated plastic items attached to your parking garage ceiling so water stops dripping on cars, pull them down and get to the source of the issue. That means water is getting into your podium slab and is effectively rusting the structural rebar that's holding your community up. Some of the possible dangers of leaving these areas unattended include, safety issues surrounding the structural integrity of the association, and just knowing that once rebar starts to rust, expand, and get damaged, it's going to be a far more expensive fix in the long run. This is the bones of the association, and we need to protect it as fast and as soon as possible. General steps for repairing areas like this is going to be demolition of the tile or grinding off of the waterproofing system, inspection of the base concrete slab, performing all the necessary patch and pre-work repairs, including patching cracks, spalling concrete, addressing the rebar, and so forth. And then finally, we're going to install a new waterproofing system, whether that be fiberglass or urethane based. And we want to make sure we keep sloping in mind so that water goes from the area where it's collected to the drains or a leading edge and doesn't cause long-term damage. Finally, you can go ahead and go with basic finishes, solid color and textures, or you have options to go with more intricate designs, which can be tile or so forth. And just keep in mind that working with your licensed contractor, that the more intricate the design, the higher the cost, and they'll be able to step you through these. Generally speaking, waterproofing over these areas can last anywhere between 15 and 20 years, but you really need to make sure that you're having a licensed contractor inspect and maintain these at least every 5 years for you, recoating the top and giving it a nice coating that's going to be UV and durable resistance. The next type of deck we're going to be discussing is going to be a wood substructure deck. So let's start off by what is a wood substructure deck. A wood substructure deck is a deck or walking surface that's made from wood framing or plywood rather than a solid concrete slab. Many of your personal patios or decks at your associations are made from this, and it needs to be maintained and waterproofed, of course. Some of the common hazards and deterioration to look out for are visibly cracked or deteriorated walking surface, visible rust around the flashing base of the deck or your handrails, loose or wobbly railing, which means the wood that the railing is attached to is deteriorated and possibly dry rotted, or the absence of drainage, which means the water is pooling on the deck. And just to give you a few examples of these visually, these are some of the projects that we're currently working on now. The wood deck framing deterioration, water is getting in this deck for over 10 years, and we have mold and dry rot. The entire deck needed to be replaced. The entire corner of this other deck at the walking deck failure has completely deteriorated. My foot actually went through the deck looking for those cracks and top deterioration. This is another deck that had over 20 years of water intrusion, and it was never maintained by the association. And the last one is just showing mispitching of a deck, meaning that water is constantly pooling and collecting on this area of the deck, which is going to cause long-term damage and needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Some of the possible dangers of leaving this unattended or unmaintained are structural compromise of the wind members and framing, direct life safety issues, meaning that the railing may not be adequately attached or somebody may be able to fall through the deck, or other water intrusion if this can lead to common areas or units below. So it's really a large issue at the long run that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Steps for repair and replacement is going to be, first off, demolition. And we're going to be removing all the damaged components, whether that be the plywood walking surface, the fall protection railing at the edge of the deck, the flashing around, anything that's visibly deteriorated that we're able to identify during the bidding process. From there, we're going to inspect the structural integrity of the components inside the deck to see if there's anything we couldn't visibly see, and then replace all those removed components and possibly new additions that need to be added to make the deck stronger, or if it's identified by a structural engineer to be added. Following this, we're going to go install a new waterproofing system, whether that be fiberglass or a urethane system. And once again, we need to make sure that we keep sloping in mind to ensure that that water gets to either the drains or the leading edge and doesn't pool over time. As we discussed before, this could be done with basic textures and colors, or you can do more intricate designs in these areas. Once again, the more intricate design, the more it will cost. So just work closely with your licensed contractor and they can help you step through that. Generally, lifespan is once again between 15 and 20 years as long as it's properly maintained. Maintenance, at least once every 5 years, need to be inspected, recoated, and make sure there's not any undue deterioration caused by either residents or just pooling water when the last time it was built. And I will say that In light of looking at the wood substructure decks, we do know that SB 326 is right around the corner. So starting in the first quarter of next year, Trifecta Painting and Construction is going to be rolling out a full deck-by-deck SB 326 solution for all of the HOA organizers associations where it hasn't been addressed yet. The final area of waterproofing we're going to discuss today is planters. So these planters can be over dirt, or they can be over your podium deck or against a wall against a wall that's sharing with a unit. So waterproofing of these can be very vital to the general maintenance of the association. Some of the common hazards and deterioration to look for is water in and around the base of the planter, discoloration or stucco failure, which I'll give you an example of right here, where the water is actually moving through the block wall and is causing the paint to fail. If the planter is up against the outside of a unit's wall and water is damaging the interior of the unit. If it's over the podium slab, and once again, we're seeing that pitting concrete dripping or efflorescence on the ceiling of the parking garage under that planter area. Or if you can visibly see the existing coating on the inside of the planter deteriorating, falling off, and you're just having general waterproofing issues. So you really have two options when it comes to correcting planters. Is going to be re-waterproofing the planter, which means you're going to have your landscaping professional remove all the dirt, soil, foliage, and irrigation from the planter, and we would come in and install a urethane-based system. Generally, these come with 10 to 20-year manufacturer warranties that we're able to pair with our own warranty and really go ahead and give the association a long-term fix. The other solution would be completely removing and demolishing the planter and putting in, let's say, freestanding pots in the area. Waterproofing is much more easily maintained, and the waterproofing where the planter was originally could be easily installed, like we talked about, over a podium or wood deck. Generally speaking, you're going to get anywhere between 10 and 20 years out of waterproofing of your planters. So you need to make sure that you adequately update your reserve studies and take this seriously, because a lot of that soil removal can be very expensive. And finally, maintenance. You're going to need to make sure you work with your landscaping professional to ensure you have the correct plants or trees in the planter that aren't going to prematurely deteriorate the waterproofing and puncture it. And also keep an eye on the exterior of the planters, as well as the ceiling and the parking areas. So I know we only had a little bit of time to review everything we're going over today, but I just wanted to thank you in advance for your time and any questions you have regarding this. And we look forward to working with you, your board, and HOA organizers in coming up with a solution for your association's waterproofing needs. Thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to introduce Tinnelly Law Group. We're an HOA law firm that's been representing homeowners associations for over 30 years. We love working with our client family, over 1,000 communities in a wide variety of practice areas, including assessment collection. In fact, in 2013, we developed Altera Assessment Recovery, which is quickly becoming an industry leader in the area. Our Find HOA Law web library is also another example of our modern approach to adding value to our clients. We hope to have the opportunity to work with you and to develop a relationship with you and your community.
Alliance Association Bank brings you powerful banking solutions for the unique needs of the community association industry. From robust lockbox and electronic payment options to lending solutions and innovative technology, everything we offer is designed to help community management companies succeed. With Alliance Association Bank, you can expect us to be as dedicated to your success as you are. To speak to one of our expert bankers, visit allianceassociationbank.com.
Adam Sterling is California's premier law firm exclusively representing common interest developments. We provide general counsel and litigation services to a diverse portfolio of clients, including both homeowner and commercial associations. For the past 10 years, Adam Sterling has advised boards of directors in the effective governance of associations and advised on the implementation of strategic plans that reduce their liability risks. Adam Sterling is well known for its weekly newsletter and award-winning website, davissterling.com. The website and the newsletter reflect the firm's commitment to education and is the #1 relied upon reference for the interpretation of the Davis-Sterling Act.
Since 1987, Swittles & Gottlieb has been helping community associations like yours navigate new legislation, such as exterior elevated elements in elections, rental restrictions, ADUs and JDUs, and with the operations through COVID-19, providing guidance to your community associations. Anything that your association needs, our legal team is here to help.
Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. And now we have some questions and answers from our panel. I'm going to start with Dr. Lori Baker-Schena. Lori, you talk about inspiring a shared vision. What do you do if you have indifferent or even contentious fellow board members?
Well, you know, it's interesting because that happens on boards. Obviously, we're not all sunshine and rainbows. However, that's why we want to, share an inspired vision, because to come together and to share a vision together really helps bring people together. So what I would suggest is use your time to say, look, we need to know where our community and our board is going. Let's say in 2021. I want everyone to let us know, everyone give me an idea of what they believe is the purpose of our board, of our association, and where do you want to go? And even the crankiest person, when you ask them individually their ideas and engage them in their opinion, you'll be surprised how even cranky people will give you some feedback. Because if they're going to say to you, I have no vision and I have no idea and I don't care, then that really shows up as something that a peer group wouldn't be appreciative of. So that whole idea of bringing together as a team and saying, we're going to together create a vision and we need your input, that value they feel really does mitigate the crankiness that you might see in one of your board members.
That's such wonderful.
I'd add one point to that, and it's very interesting what Lori says, because truthfully, even when I've had the pleasure of serving on boards, I think the quiet people who are board members often have the most Solomonic wisdom to share on the boards, but because they may be intimidated or impacted by people that are more vocal, I've always found one of the most effective ways for a president on a board to work is to go around the board to each board member and say, what's your opinion, what's your opinion, what's your opinion? So each person gets a chance to actually articulate their thoughts without being intimidated, and by being called on, they may be able to share their thoughts without just sitting quietly by and allowing everybody else to dominate.
Absolutely. That is such a great strategy, especially on Zoom meetings. But to tell everybody, I'm going to be calling on you. So in the next meeting, maybe send it around an email. I'm going to be calling on you about creating a shared vision. So please be prepared to contribute, because everyone is going to have a say. And when you do that, you involve people, even those who don't really want to be involved, but you do that, and that starts people going, even the shy ones. That's a great point.
That's really excellent to hear both of your thoughts on that. It's so important to bring people together, and especially when you're working together as a board. Thank you both for your feedback. And actually that brings us to a wonderful segue for a question for Steve Roseman. Steve, if a board member disagrees with the decision the board makes, are they able to speak out against it?
This is a question that comes up so often on boards where there's a dissenting vote or opinion of a board member, and the board majority makes a decision, and then that board member goes out and undermines the decision of the board, causing significant conflict and other related allegations. I think we have to differentiate between two different types of board meetings initially. One, executive session board meetings, where anything that's discussed is confidential, and an open meeting. So with regard to the executive session, the first and foremost important principle is board should speak with one voice. When a majority makes a decision, you are bound by that decision. Within an executive session forum, it's important to retain confidentiality, because if a board makes a decision, even if the board member feels that they didn't agree with the decision, they need to honor the majority decision and stick by it. And they cannot go out and disparage the board members or tell everyone out there that they disagreed with the decision and create conflict in the community as a result. Now, if they are adamant about a particular situation, they may document it in an email and make it part of the file, even though it may not find its way into the executive session minutes, but there's an obligation to remain confidential. If we're now in an open meeting where there's an open dialogue and everybody hears the opinions, they can go ahead and state why they oppose to that opinion, but they still have a legal obligation as well as a responsibility and a fiduciary obligation to go with the majority decision. If they have disagreements, that's the free right of everyone to have that debate. But once a decision is made, they have to stick with that decision. And I think that's a very, very important lesson to learn by board members, because truthfully, I always say that in HOAs, it's the best form of democracy out there when it comes to decision-making power. So I hope that answers the question.
It certainly does. And thanks for that distinction. A lot of times board members do have questions between the open session and executive session. Thank you.
By the way, can I just add one other point to that, Netta? You know, sometimes you'll see dissenting voices who vote no on a decision, adamant that they document in the minutes why they voted no, or I want my name to appear in the minutes saying I voted no. There is no legal obligation on the part of the majority of the board to reference how particular board members voted. If the majority of the board in the minutes decide they just want to document approved or how they want to reflect it, that's up to the majority of the board when those minutes are approved. And that's why I've said if they have a disagreement, they can always document it in the form of an email or something else that may not necessarily be part of the minutes, but at least reflect their reasoning.
And thank you for that, Steve. I think property managers and recording secretaries across California are going to appreciate that feedback, because I know we're always asked to, or rather demanded, to include something or extract something from the minutes to that effect. So that's also really helpful. Thank you, Steve. Our next question is for Cyrus with Swedelson and Gottlieb, and this is regarding AB 3182. How is a fee related to rentals, either one time or monthly, judged to be reasonable or not?
Okay, well, thanks for having me. So this is a controversial topic, and I think a lot of attorneys have different opinions on this. Generally speaking, under the Davis-Sterling Act and in California, associations were nonprofit corporations, and associations can't just be charging fees, charging for expenses that the association isn't actually incurring to some extent. And there's case law in California that basically speaks to that, that if you're going to charge a fee because of the costs or the, what happens to the association as a result of all the rentals, short-term or otherwise, well, it needs to be reasonably tied to what actually exists in the community. So, if the association is thinking about imposing some kind of rental fee or some kind of fee relating to the fact that, hey, renters are going to be more prevalent in our community in light of AB 3182, it needs to be reasonably tied to actual costs. So what are move-in and move-out costs? Costs associated with reprogramming, your access control, your gate, your door, et cetera. So things that are actually impacting the community, I think it would be judged as reasonable to impose charges associated with that. However, it's very dependent on what your legal counsel says. Some things may or may not be reasonable from one firm to another. So as far as charging monthly versus one time specifically, I think that's a little more nuanced of a question. I think if there's some kind of annual charge, or again, some kind of charge that's tied to the actual costs being incurred, generally speaking, by the association, I think it would be reasonable. And whether that's one time or monthly, I think that just depends on the situation.
Thank you, Cyrus. I know this is a topic that is so new for everybody, and we have tons of questions coming in. I myself have a lot of questions about it, and I'm sure we're going to get different opinions as time progresses. So thank you for your opinion and feedback on that. The next question that I have is for Regina with Edward Jones. Should saving and investing money be a top priority at this time, or should people be focusing on paying down debt?
Thanks, Netta. You know, I get asked this question actually quite a bit, and the short answer is it depends. It really depends on each specific situation. When I'm working with my clients to build out a plan for whatever they want their money to achieve, whether it's saving to pay for college or buying real estate or saving for retirement, we consider a lot of different factors. We look at money coming in, we look at money going out, and of course we look at and consider debt as well as many other variables. The interest rate that someone is actually paying on that specific debt is a very important factor. However, if you hold off investing until you are debt-free, then you will most likely miss out on years of growth and compounding, which are extremely important in helping your money grow at the rate you need it to achieve your goals. So therefore, the answer will really vary on each specific situation.
Can I add just one legal point to that, which a lot of people don't realize? That when people invest in SEP IRAs or some form of retirement account, let's assume they get a salary and they want to contribute either their company through the 401 or through a SEP IRA account, that's a judgment-proof investment, because SEP IRAs on a bankruptcy are untouchable, and I'm subject to obviously speaking to a bankruptcy attorney, but I'm pretty certain is untouchable as far as creditors attaching those SEP IRAs. So the reason I raise that is people who don't realize that they can invest in some form of retirement accounts should speak to an attorney or speak to their financial advisor to determine whether or not investing pre-tax dollars and having the protections that may exist there be a very worthy way of putting money aside for those later years, or even, God forbid, on a rainy day, even there'll be penalties associated with it. But it's something to consider from an investment perspective, even as you say, just small contributions every month to that, because the S&P and NASDAQ and Dow keep going one way, even though it's like this.
Absolutely. I think there's so much uncertainty surrounding finances these days. So Regina, thank you for your sound advice and feedback, and Steve also for yours to add to that. Our next question is for Antis. If a community is experiencing issues with a certain kind of roofing material, would it make sense to change the material? Example, from tile to asphalt shingles. And after you answer that, I'd like to follow up and ask our attorneys on the panel, would there be a problem in changing the roofing material when it pertained to using reserve funds to do that? So we'll give it to the Antis first.
Okay, thank you. So roofing material, it will depend on what the city is going to allow. So the city building department is going to calculate that with some engineering specs that are going to give us a amount of weight per square foot that is allowed on top of the structure. And if we exceed that weight, or if it exceeds that weight, we wouldn't be able to do that. In regards to changing from tile to shingle or shingle to tile, the main thing to probably consider is the flashing around all of that. If you have a roof that meets a wall from a lower floor roof into an upper floor wall, the flashing that is associated with that wall is at a height that is going to, it's going to flash over that roofing type. And so tile might be 2.5 inches tall, where shingle is 1/2 inch tall. And so we have a gap that we have to deal with there. And so sometimes that can mean having to basically demolition that portion of the wall to install new flashing at the right height and put stucco or siding back in place. But it starts with an engineering spec and the city building department to see if they would let us do that. And if this is a product that is no longer manufactured, then absolutely, we're doing what we can to, typically we're doing what we can to just match what is there, but go with something that's more current and is going to be, you know, available later.
And thank you. And then from a legal perspective, what do you all think about changing the material or type of roofing, or kind of any common area for that matter? Is that something that the board and association can do?
I'll jump in here. I think it is appropriate and reasonable to do so. I think this begs the question of whether this invokes, quote unquote, a capital improvement, whether you would view this as an entirely new component in the association for which you need to reserve versus an already existing component that you're simply modifying or replacing. So I think that's really where the question lies. I would tend to view this as not a capital improvement, most likely, that it's just you have reserves that cover the roof and the roof expenses, and this is just a change in the nature of the materials. However, it's really just roof repair and or roof replacement, whereas a capital improvement, it's not a term that's legally defined actually for us, but most people regard a capital improvement as an entirely new improvement or a complete repurposing of a component. So if you don't have some kind of component like a gym and then you just add a gym out of nowhere, that would probably be viewed as a capital improvement. But this is really just a modification or replacement of the roof. I think different firms could have different opinions on that, but I think you have reserves for a reason. They provide a landscape for everything that you want to include and from a funding standpoint. And if your roof is already there, a change in materials likely would not be viewed as a capital improvement. Of course, you could have some governing documents that define capital improvements more specifically, but that would depend on a case-by-case basis for each association.
You know, I love Cyrus is always preconditioned on different lawyers having different opinions, but there's two of us, so there should be at least 3 opinions between us all. But I completely agree with Cyrus. I think you've got to do an analysis on a case-by-case basis, but as technology develops, for example, changing the type of roofing material because it's required because of life safety related issues on fire department requirements, or the longevity of the new replacement extends the life of the roof by another 10 years. And I think you've got to look at each capital improvement within a community. For example, upgrading of security systems at a front gate. Some people say that's a massive capital improvement because we didn't have it. So the analysis, as Sarah said, look at the governing documents, but also speak to your attorney and say, would this be defined as a capital improvement? And if it doesn't, could you give us an opinion to at least make sure we've documented the file why we haven't defined an upgrade or other work that's been done in the community as a capital improvement? And that's how you protect yourself under the business judgment rule or the judicial deference rule, by having an attorney render a written legal opinion to support why it's not within the parameters of a capital improvement.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one more thing. The reason why this matters, whether it's a capital improvement, is because many governing documents contain provisions that require membership votes for certain capital improvements. So I think it would probably should have prefaced my comments by saying that, first of all. So it's important to know what your governing documents say, because some documents don't have capital improvement provisions. So you actually might have more free reign in some associations where there is no such language, whereas in other associations you do have very detailed capital improvement language, which necessitates a membership vote if a capital improvement will be made, and if it reaches a certain level or exceeds a certain percentage of the association's expenses. So important to that might be one of the first threshold questions we even ask.
Thank you. That was really, really well stated and very informative. Thank you to all 3 of you for answering that question. Our next question goes back to Lori. And again, I will also ask for our legal opinion to chime in as follow-up to the question for Lori. So Lori, is it okay for boards to own up to errors in judgment or mistakes to the membership at large, or does that diminish their trust in our leadership?
You know, I really believe that we do so much mistake shaming in our society. Everyone is afraid to make mistakes because, the shaming culture is just so prevalent. But at the end of the day, mistakes are human, and only through mistakes do we really learn how to do things. And I always believe that Americans in general don't like to be lied to, and they would rather hear an apology than a cover-up, if that makes any sense. So coming from that angle of really just humanity, I think that if delivered in a certain way with, what we made a mistake and we understand that we made a mistake and this is what we're doing and we learn from the mistake, I think that's the really way to build trust with your members and your homeowners. It's really the way you deliver that. I mean, if you're real defensive and not apologetic, that's one thing. But if you're apologetic and you own up to the mistake, I think I'm hoping in my heart that people understand that. But I find that in general, that is much more well accepted than just lying about the fact you're covering things up.
And from a legal counsel perspective, mistakes can be costly when they affect the association. So how would you, I know this is kind of a vague question, but what would you suggest in terms of mistakes? Should board members own up to them? How do you navigate them?
Well, I can tell you, I wish everything boiled down to what was the right thing to do. And I do believe what is the right thing to do must be done. But I can tell you from a legal perspective, you have to be very cautious. And I'll tell you why. You have to speak with counsel before there is any open acknowledgement of an admission of a negligent act, or even worse, an intentional act by a particular board member for a number of reasons. One, that can be used against you and will be used against you in any lawsuit. Two, the question of coverage is impacted by statements made by board members. My advice, and this is purely a legal advice, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will consult with an attorney and get legal guidance on that front. Then the attorney can give you a legal opinion, evaluate it, advise how best to disclose to the membership what the reason is. And I understand when I'm speaking from this position, I agree with you. I think many of our leadership, and I'm talking from a national level down, over the last 50 years would just fess up and said, I'm sorry, I did wrong. The American public is very forgiving, but you have to weigh that up against the legal implications and the risks associated with liability to the board of directors, as well as coverage and insurance related issues which play a part. So my simple advice is, there's nothing wrong with what Lori says, and I agree with her, but I think speak to counsel first or an attorney just to make sure legally you're in a good position, and then decide how to disclose it, but don't hide things from homeowners. They will come out at the end of the day.
I co-sign what Steve just said, but I'll add from a practical level, I see all the time situations where a board might endeavor to remodel maybe a lobby or do something that everybody hates and everybody's against it. And, sometimes you have situations where we're not talking about intentional misdeeds or negligence even, just things that the board has done and it turned out to be the wrong decision. Maybe the problem kind of reared its head again later, whether it's a maintenance issue or like I said, a remodel issue. People just didn't like it from an aesthetic standpoint. And you can make mistakes like that, and as long as as Steve referred to the business judgment rule earlier, as long as you're making informed decisions as a board, listening to experts, taking action, or maybe taking a maintenance position in light of what the experts tell you, and you make a reasonable decision that's well informed, you are complying with the business judgment rule. So, you would be acting reasonably. And if you have to say to people, again, I'd say after maybe a conversation with legal counsel, but if you have to say to people, hey, everybody, we know that everybody didn't necessarily like the decision we made, and we acknowledge that, but here's what we're doing to fix it or to address it, or here's what we're going to do in the decision-making process when it comes to something aesthetic in the future, because we know people have different taste. I think that's completely reasonable, but I think always remember that the business judgment rule matters, and as long as you're making informed decisions based on expert advice, from a legal standpoint, you should be protected.
And
Thank you, everyone. It sounds, sorry, go ahead, Lori.
I want to add that this is the beauty of having legal advice right here instantaneously, because it really provides insight. And it also goes to show our board members that getting advice from experts, and so you get the full 360 degrees on an issue, is so valuable. And I just learned something right now, some extra things that I now can consider. And so to bring in experts and to do that, I think is just a wonderful thing. It doesn't show weakness, it shows strength. And so I think we all need to remember that as well.
Indeed. And
I'll just add one more thing. I think there's always this sense, or you get this sense at a lot of associations, that it's the board versus everybody else. Or, the board even physically sits somewhere that's separated from other people. And I think the more, subject to the legal side of it being okay, I think the more that there can be, even when it is a board decision in a certain circumstance, the more that the board can kind of convey and articulate its issues and or its faults, to the extent a bone can be thrown to the membership. I think that's important. I think it kind of whittles away this divide between the board and the association's members.
It sounds like we need to handle it more on a case-by-case basis. But Cyrus, you brought up a really interesting point regarding aesthetics. And I will say, from a manager's perspective, that seems to be the hottest button that wakens up homeowners with lots of opinions when something aesthetically changes in the community. And I love the advice that you offered, which is to acknowledge maybe perhaps setting in motion a new plan or engaging homeowners to acknowledge their feelings in that instance where maybe it's not wrongdoing, but it's just perhaps we didn't go about it the correct way. We didn't engage our homeowners to consult about an aesthetic issue, and here's what we're going to do in the future. And I've often experienced board members who really, rather than kind of acknowledging that mistake, will hold their ground and their decisions and create more separation with the homeowners. And so I think that's really important advice, which is to, again, open it up and let homeowners know that their opinions matter. So our next question is for Steve.
I'm sorry, can I just add one point to this? Just to do full circle. I must tell you, there's a number of communities that we've had where they've put it out to a discussion of the owners and a vote, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So one of our communities decided they were going to repaint the entire exterior common area, and it had that old-fashioned pinkish type look to the structure. And they put it out to the vote of the owners, and what they did was they said, here's 3 different colors, write your name at the bottom of which one you like. But we did put a disclaimer language at the bottom to say, please understand, we are considering your opinion, but understand that we cannot delegate the decision-making power from the board. So this is not a vote of the owners on the color. The board makes the final decision, but we take into account your thoughts. And always remember, you can't please all the people all the time. It's just not possible. So we're going to listen to what you all have to say, but at the same time, you've entrusted us as a board to make a decision, and we're going to base it on that. And I think that plays into the very point that you're making, that mistakes are made, but even if it's not necessarily a mistake or it's a color not everybody likes, it doesn't mean it's not okay from a legal perspective for the board to make that decision.
Yes, thank you, Steve. That was a really wonderful point that you added there. So the next question is actually for you, Steve. How do you balance being a good neighbor with being a good board member? We don't want to create a sense of hostility with our neighbors, but certainly board members have an obligation to enforce the governing documents and sometimes aren't as popular.
I must tell you, this issue has become even more important and even more difficult during COVID. And I can tell you why. We have a situation in one of our communities where the gentleman across the road is now not only growing marijuana, but is also now producing or manufacturing in his garage. And the board president is very concerned because she has a real worry that if this issue is brought to their attention, that he may somehow come after her family, or she has a very serious concern. Here's the fundamentally important point. A board member is a representative who acts on behalf of the corporation. So, for example, if a board member is walking in the street and an owner approaches them and says to them, I want to discuss something with you, the standard answer there is, I understand what you're saying. I'm just one. I may be the board president, but I'm just one out of 5 or 7, however many board members there are. Please put it in writing or come to the board meeting and address that issue. I cannot speak on behalf of the corporation because I'm only one person. So I can tell you, avoid communication about HOA matters with owners if you can, as a step, and explain to them you're not doing this just to be difficult. You're doing this because you don't want to create conflict, and also you're one of 5 votes. And that's why it's important. The second important issue, and this is more a management issue that ties in, if there's a violation of the governing documents, that you can get independent, objective verification of the issue. So, for example, if there's a violation of a landscaping issue, or somebody's parking overnight of a vehicle, or there's other violations, it is better to get a photograph or some documentation that can be presented without saying, this is the person on the board who presented that information. Because although in California, in the criminal justice system, you have a right to confront your accuser, there's a misconception that whoever reported somebody is the one that has to be cross-examined by that person that is called to a notice and hearing. So if you can get independent, objective verification of a violation without having to bring a board member into this process, I would strongly recommend you do that, because it takes away that conflict as a board member. I like management to deal with those issues, and obviously management gets into trouble very often, but the position is simply, we got no skin in the game. We're here to just enforce the governing documents. Obviously, down the line, if you bring in an injunction or some type of court action, you will need declarations signed, whether it's by the board members or someone else. My belief in that scenario, the more declarations, the better, if more than one person has witnessed it, so that you sort of spread the fire across a group of people so that they don't just target one person who's coming after them. Get independent verification of whatever the issue is. I hope that does answer the question, but the important thing is board members need to understand that they don't always have to be the bad guys. Deflect it to management, deflect it to law, to legal, to write letters if they're worried about it, to not vilify these board members. And as Cyrus said, and this is so crucial, it's not us versus them as board members. We are here in a voluntary capacity to represent the community. We do this until you choose to vote somebody else. And as I always joke about, I say to the board members, tell that particular homeowner that you will double your salary if you continue with their attacks, because I'm going to go from 0 to 0 in what I'm doing. So it's important to understand it's not an us versus them. We're enforcing it. Change the governing documents if you don't like what we're doing.
Yeah, and I would add just real quick to Steve's first point, which is really important. We know that a lot of these communities are small, they're personal. You're in close quarters to people. You're going to come across people. Hopefully, especially once COVID is over, we all hope at some point. But if somebody asks you a question, I think there's kind of a famous case about an architectural decision, and hey, to a board member, an owner saying, hey, do you like my door? Do you like my pink door? And the board member basically says, yeah, I love it. And then it becomes a legal fight because it's, hey, did the association technically approve of that? Or did they know about that and not do anything? So, to Steve's first point, I think it's really important that, hey, I don't represent, I represent the association. I'm just one board member. Please submit something in writing. It really has a legal consequence. You could bind the association from a liability standpoint if you have some kind of improper communication, or you just say something that you think is innocuous and it turns out to be something more than that. So from a legal standpoint, it's really important to have things submitted in writing or submitted to management, as Steve said, because we've seen real life scenarios where board members can unintentionally bind the association to an issue like that.
I'm going to take my moderator hat off just for a second and put my community manager hat on. And just to point out that a lot of the questions that we've posed to our panel has resulted back to dissension among board members and separation and division with homeowners and board members. And so I just want to challenge and welcome and encourage board members who are here with us today to go back to your boards, go back to your communities, and really think about how to bring your membership together, how to engage in better and stronger communication, and again, community events to help bridge that gap between the us versus them mentality. It's so important to create a harmonious environment, and it just was something that popped into my mind because it is something that we work very heavily on with our communities, and it's so important, again, to maintain that peace and harmony between and among board members as well as with the homeowners. And with that, yes.
Can I add one point to that? You know, and your management company is absolutely excellent at this, and it's such a fundamentally important point. I think many people violate governing documents not just to be that homeowner. They do it out of ignorance or lack of knowledge. And that's why the more from management's perspective in educating owners, you know, did you know that you have to take the trash cans back in the same day as the pickup? Did you know that you cannot park your vehicle overnight on the street without getting a permit? Once owners are educated along those lines, which you do very often with your boards, that takes away a lot of the conflict. There will always be that homeowner that should live on a property far away from every other homeowner. There's always one of them, unfortunately. But the reality is a lot of homeowners violate because they don't realize it's a rule. They don't realize it's in the CC&Rs, and the board has no choice but to enforce it. And if they don't, legally they waive their rights, and that's a breach of fiduciary duty. So I think a lot of education for board members and even for homeowners is so valuable because they really do get an understanding that we're not doing this just to fight. We're doing this because we have a legal obligation to do it. But let me explain to you what the documents say. And I think that's part of it. And I agree with you. I think social events, and I tell you, I think in a few months, God willing, we'll all be able to get back to some in-person communication. But this Zoom format has really worked well because people are coming together in communities to be able to attend meetings and participate too.
You bring up an excellent point there, Steve, because I too find that oftentimes homeowners don't know and certainly want to know. If somebody takes the time to explain something to them, they'll actually listen and will take that in. And actually, as this is our 8th annual ABCs of HOAs, where we offer education to our board members, we recognize the importance of educating homeowners as well. So we did about 12 to 13 short segments this year, which will be up on our HOA organizers website and our Facebook page. It's ABCs of HOAs Homeowners Edition, and we do quick little segments to educate our homeowners. So I also encourage and welcome you board members to share the information with your homeowners. We talk about things like why board members make decisions, insurance, board meetings, certain things like that, just to help offer short little spurts of education to our homeowners. So the next question is for Cyrus, and we're going back to AB 3182. What do we do if the membership votes against the amendment relating to AB 3182?
Okay, so this is another controversial part of AB 3182, and I think there's a lot of discussion amongst all of the community association attorneys who practice, and we've all been discussing this through various email threads and chains, and I think I've seen a coming together of all the attorneys trying to figure out how best to facilitate these kind of questions for our clients and associations. So yeah, this is all untested. I think that's the first thing we need to make clear. This has not been tested in the courts. There's not a lot of direction. I will go out on a limb and say the statute is not as clearly worded or drafted as we would all hope and like. So I think the background here is the statute says that associations have to amend their governing documents by the end of 2021. So it doesn't say whether you need to obtain a membership vote. It's unclear about that. So let's say you do take a conservative, safe approach and seek a membership vote. They vote no. Well, the statute also says an association could be fined if you willfully violate this statute. So if you seek a membership vote, the membership votes no, and you seek to enforce the statute anyway, the minimum thresholds under the statute, and you say, hey, we understand you voted no, but this is statutory and we're not going to enforce something that we know is against the law, would that constitute a willful violation by the association? I personally think it would not. Again, this is going to be very fact sensitive and dependent on what each association's legal counsel says, as always. But I think if the association attempts to vote on this, the board puts it out to a membership vote, people vote no. It might not even be a no vote. You might not be able to obtain quorum, which is really common in a lot of associations. So you may have different circumstances where you just cannot pass a vote. Well, then question is that a willful violation of the statute? And I think the association would have acted reasonably. And you could argue, some people will argue that you don't have to seek a membership vote in certain situations. So, if you take that approach and you still went out of your way to get a membership vote, then I think you're really going out of your way to not willfully violate the statute. So it's definitely, a tough situation for our associations. I think you need to comply with the law as best you can. And I think if somebody challenges that or says anything contrary to what the association attempts to do, you would probably put yourself in a defensible position to walk into a court and to say, look, this is what the statute says. This is what we're trying to do. We could talk about this topic for hours, quite honestly. There's a lot of back and forth on this, but I think if you do go out for a membership vote and they vote no, I think it's important for the board to say, look, we understand this, but we have to comply with the law and we need to enforce things as best as possible, assuming that's what your attorney says.
Surprise, surprise, two lawyers, two opinions. Can I weigh in if you don't mind?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I think Cyrus is right on this issue with regard to the willful compliance, non-compliance, but I don't think that's the issue that is of bigger concern, in my opinion, for boards. Here's the dynamic. Let's assume there's a provision and it says 25% and you cannot prohibit rentals, and there's language that's built in that's inconsistent with the new law. So it's very clear that if this provision goes out for the vote, and I believe the way the language is written, it has to be a vote of the owners. Whether that's right or wrong, I believe that's what it says. Now that should be corrected up in Sacramento, and when it is, they should just say, because the law is changing, that boards can vote to bring it in compliance. But up until then, I think it says it has to be a vote of the owners. So let's assume you vote and the owners say no or don't even vote, as Cyrus has said. Then the question is, we've got a provision that's unenforceable. The code says, the civil code says, that now your provision is void. If that provision is now void, does that make that provision completely unenforceable? If that provision is now unenforceable, does that eradicate any renter restrictions whatsoever in the community, other than, for example, no less than 30 days? But other than that, there may not be any rental caps because your provision said 50%. Now you want to say 25%, but that's just something the board's making up. The owners didn't vote for that. Therefore, does that void the entire provision? If it voids the entire provision, that opens up another whole can of worms. And I agree with Cyrus, this could be different opinions from different lawyers. Now the next question is, okay, what can the board do? Can they now create a set of rules that govern this? And I would say absolutely create a set of rules that address this issue. But then the next question that comes up, if you've got rules that are inconsistent with the CC&Rs and the CC&R provision is now void, does that mean that any rules that put rental caps or other restrictions per the code that are inconsistent with a void provision or a non-existent lease provision, are they overridden and therefore are not enforceable? Fabulous questions for lawyers to litigate down the line unless we can get Sacramento to fix it. But my advice is go ahead, move forward with the amendment to the lease, to the CC&Rs, simultaneously draft a set of rules to address this issue. But this is unfortunately a piece of legislation that didn't address the unintended consequences. And there's many more, as Cyrus says, that we won't even be able to get to today.
Yeah, and our firm is adopting rules simultaneously with CC&R amendments. So it sounds like we're on the same page as far as telling boards and telling associations that I would introduce a distinction. If the CC&Rs are non-existent as to rentals, that you're looking at a potentially different situation than if you have CC&Rs that are not in compliance with the new law. So, you know, I think that's a distinction that is going to be important. I think adopting rules is certainly important, but if you have silence in your CC&Rs, if your CC&Rs do not address a rental cap, and now all of a sudden for the first time you're introducing a leasing cap, that's a different question, and I think that's important for boards to understand that attorneys really might have different opinions on what to do when in the situation where your CC&Rs are silent on rentals, because technically you're not out of compliance with the law in that case. Therefore, you're not required to amend your CC&Rs necessarily. So it's that really puts more of a discretionary kind of imprint on the association in that situation. So a little bit of a distinction on that, but yeah, I agree. I think rules are important, and this law takes effect January 1st. So that means as of January 1st, the argument that these out of compliance provisions are now unenforceable and completely eradicated, essentially, that argument takes effect on January 1st. So
yeah,
important.
Even though they have to legally, so that there's no penalties, have this done by the end of next year, in reality, it's effective immediately. One last point I'd add to that is, here's where the business judgment rule, the judicial deference rule, plays a major role. Speak to your attorney. Get a written legal opinion based on your documents, what you should do, and commit your lawyer to that position. So if there's ever a lawsuit down the line, somebody challenging a rental, claiming damages because they couldn't rent and they should have been allowed to rent, or other way around, you have a written legal opinion from your attorney committing, you relied on that expert, and you took action based on that legal opinion that was granted. That's where legal opinions, and I keep emphasizing it, is so important for boards to make decisions based on guidance and advice, whether it's accounting, legal, or whatever the experts are, especially management.
Yeah.
You know, just when we think that we've gotten a handle on the new laws that have been presented, we get a whole new set of new laws that we now have to learn. I can't thank you enough, and I know our board members who are here with us today really appreciate all of the in-depth feedback that you both have provided regarding this topic. And I'm sure that there will be follow-up questions for legal counsel as we all navigate and learn to adapt to AB 3182. I'm going to move to Regina next. We have a couple of good questions, wonderful questions for her. So the first question is, are the underlying economic indicators that are driving the stock market in good shape?
Well, in the last 2 weeks, the stock market has hit record-setting highs that we haven't experienced in 125 years. So we're also we experienced the shortest bear market in history in March. So the underlying indicators such as consumer sentiment is very strong. And it's actually consumer spending that drives 75% of our GDP in the US. So unemployment, another indicator, has been declining steadily from 14.7% in March of this year to last reported at 6.9% in October. But it's important, and I talk a lot more about this in the presentation, but it's also important to remember that the stock market is not the economy, but rather a reflection of consumer sentiment. So if we look at the stock market over the last 100 years, we can see a constant upward trajectory. That means the stock market has recovered 100% of the time. So although the media headlines may want you to feel like it's all doom and gloom when it comes to the stock market, I advise my clients to focus on what we can control. It's buying quality investments in a well-diversified portfolio and taking into account various sectors and asset classes. Since we can't time the market, that works only 1.8% of the time, which means it doesn't work. Then it's really about having a well-diversified portfolio and then holding on to those investments for the appropriate amount of time. This type of strategy has shown to perform well in all situations.
Regina, thank you for that. I do have another quick question for you. We do have a lot of associations that directly employ staff, whether it be their community managers or maintenance personnel. But of course, they're not employment experts. And there is something that we are hearing about employers being required to provide a retirement plan to their employees. Can you share a little bit about what is required?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, as you mentioned in the last question, laws are always changing, and laws, especially in California, changed as of January. And if you actually go to calsavers.com, you can read much more about it. But basically, employers who have 5 or more employees are mandated by the state of California to offer a retirement plan. And if they don't have a retirement plan, and this is going to happen over a 2-year period, but it's already in effect for companies that have 100 or more employees. And then next year it'll be 50 or more, and then finally 5 or more. And what's going to happen is the state of California is going to come in, they're going to fine you per individual that does not have a plan, and then they're going to put you into something that's the equivalent of a Roth. So it's not going to have any tax benefits for the employer. So if you've been thinking about it, or if you've been, just wondering whether it makes sense, there's a lot of benefits to designing something that's actually going to be much more beneficial both to you as an employer and to your employees. That's going to have tax benefits and, of course, the opportunity to save for retirement. And there's a lot of tax credits right now. So if you're starting a new plan, there's ways to actually do it where you might not pay anything for the first couple of years. So I definitely would encourage you to seek out, a financial advisor. Feel free to call me if you have any questions, and really take a look at how do you create something that's going to be beneficial both to you as an employer and to your employees.
Thank you, Regina. That's really helpful information. Our final question is going to be for Antis, and it is, are permits generally required to be pulled for roof maintenance or recoating of flat roofs?
Permits are not required to do maintenance on the roofing. However, roof coating, when considered, so roof coating comes in several different ways, but when roof coating is being applied to call it a new roof, because they can do that, that would then require having a permit pulled by the building department.
Thank you. That was very straightforward and helpful. I want to thank all of the members of our panel today. I want to thank all of you who also participated in our question and answers. If you did have any questions that we were not able to get to today, we do apologize, but we will certainly and gladly share our lovely panel their information with you so that you can follow up and reach out to them directly with questions that you may have. And once again, thank you. And we will continue with finalizing our presentations today.
Hello, HOA organizers and friends. My name is Robert Gross. I'm with Bergman Group. We're a construction management company focused solely on supporting the needs of HOA organizations. Our core values are very straightforward at Bergman Group. We help protect your investment. We advocate on the behalf of the association at its board. We defend the interests and mitigate risks. And most importantly, I think we educate our clients in the process of maintaining, repairing, and restoring occupied residential projects.
Hi there, my name is Wendy Weber and I run Insurance Services of the West here in Santa Monica, California. Thank you for attending today's ABCs of HOAs. We'd love to help you or answer any questions for your board or your members. Come check out our website, hoaspecialist.com, or give us a call, 1-800-535-3635. My name's Wendy Weber and I hope we get to talk to you soon. Have a great day.
I want to thank each and every one of you, and speakers included, for joining us today. As you saw and heard, we put together the best of our industry to make sure that you received the top-notch information. Rest assured, if you didn't get a chance to hear the speakers in the other breakout room, we'll be publishing both topics and both presentations on our website very soon. We'll be sure to send you an email to let you know when the presentations are up and available. And we would certainly appreciate you sharing the information with your fellow board members or other colleagues who might be board members. After all, it's really our intention to help educate and empower board members across the state of California. Thank you for dedicating your Saturday and joining us today. I want to personally wish you a very happy holiday season, lots of health, success, and happiness, and I want to wish you a happy new year. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care. We'll see you soon.